And now we're doing the ring strap. This is the raw piece of cloth that you begin with, which is roughly the right size. But the very first step that you need to do is to measure and mark that piece of cloth as it's been indicated on the sheet of paper. But you have a 1 centimeter edge and the center part is 8.4 centimeters. So the total width of the cloth is 10.4 centimeters. Now you'll see, if you look closely here, that it's only on one end that I have drawn the 1 centimeter selvage on the end. The other is not drawn. That's because we'll call that the open end. Now what we do with this is we proceed as we did with the straps, and that is with the lines facing outward, we fold it in half lengthwise without ironing it, because later we're going to turn it inside out, and then we begin to pin. And we start making sure that this corner that is marked is exactly pinned on both sides in the exact corner where the two lines meet. In this case, you pin starting from the end here, and you pin the entire thing except for this end. This is the end that you leave open, in which you're going to turn it upside down, inside out. So you'll also note that you don't need any red pins here, as long as you don't sew this. The next step is to sew with black thread 2 millimeters outside the selvage line, just as you did with the straps, and go all the way around again except for the end, leaving the end piece open. So you sew in there. I don't know if you can see the stitches. Two centimeters outside, 2 millimeters outside the selvage line. Now we want to make that square corner where we have to fold the fabric one time on one side, fold it on the other, just like we did for the strap. This is going to make a very sharp pointed corner. So we fold them over and then we sew an X right in the corner across this way and that way. So there's an X in the corner. Here's the X sewn on the very corner. So just like the other strap, we've sewn the corner down, emphasizing the tip, the very tip, that point right there, so that when it's turned inside out, that's a very sharp corner right there. Okay. And now we're going to fold this flap over on top, not ironing it because it'll have to be turned inside out, and we'll be attaching a piece of backing to it. This is the same procedure of pinning that we used for the major strap, only pinning to that flap and not going all the way through. But in this case we don't need to leave a space because we're going to turn it inside out from the end. So this shows the ring strap having been stitched to the flap, and now we're ready to turn it inside out. This step is like turning a sock inside out. Chopstick can be helpful here. Using the sharper end of the chopstick in order to get these nice crisp corners at the end. Pushing it, finding the corner with the chopstick there. So the entire thing is turned inside out, and the backing is made sure that it's not scrunched up, and flatten it. So you have it still unfinished on one end and with these nice corners on the other end. And now we're going to begin to fold this ring strap. First thing to do is this will be the front. The place where you've turned it inside out and there's a seam tends to show on one side more than on the other. So pick the side that it doesn't show on, and the width of this strap is 4 centimeters. So you want to come 4 centimeters up from the side that's sewn, and because this is the part that will be sewn onto the rakusu face, and I've marked with pins on both sides where the 4 centimeter mark is. Those are just guides to help me. And from that point I measure up a little more than 2 finger widths, up to about here, and I'm going to make a little bit of a mark. It's a little more than 2 finger widths. We're going to be folding this top part at that point. And as a guideline for the folding, I'm going to mark the center, 2 centimeters, and again for my own benefit in the folding I'm going to draw a line. Let's just help with the folding. Now that line can continue down to here. That's just for help. The idea is that we go from the point where the pin is to here, and that's where the fold becomes complete into the middle. And so you're folding it over so that it ends up as a single piece with in thirds folded on top of each other like that. And it meets right at that point. That line that I drew in the center is just as a guideline. Since you're folding it in thirds, you'll see here that you fold it over so that it reaches a point down at one pen, and then in the center it's about the same width on both sides, so that when you fold it over in thirds it's equal, if you see what I mean. So that's one part. And you can see where the corners kind of come, and when it's folded over on top of itself above that. In the future I wouldn't put backing any higher than about here, which makes it about 8 centimeters of backing, because the rest of this strap that's tripled over would be fine without backing in it. Now the next step, since it's all pinned in place, is to sew it so that it stays like this. And what I've done, and I'm just inventing this because I don't have any instructions, is I turned it over on the back and I sewed through so that I caught the inside of these pieces, but the stitching did not come all the way through, so the stitching doesn't show on the front. So here after it's stitched, you can see that the front doesn't show any stitching, and in the back it doesn't matter, so the stitching is rather rough in the back. Then when it's prepared to be put on the rakusu, it can be folded over in the back and the ring put on. Then you're prepared to sew this onto the rakusu.